Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming this evening. I'm particularly glad to see our local chapter of Penn Women meeting with us, as they often do in March. It's our pleasure to be welcoming Erica Ferencik, who has not previously been to the store, but has published a couple of absolutely killer thrillers. And tonight we are going to be talking about Girl on Ice, which takes place in Greenland, which has both an imaginative and a scientific all sort of rolled into one. It's really a fascinating book. But I thought we might ease into it by talking to you a little bit about Greenland. I've actually been there 4 times, although I have not been there like Erica, out, in the howling ice and whatever, but in more civilized parts of Greenland like Katortak and Nuuk. Have any of you been to Greenland that are here? Well, the first time was in 1989, and it was a really big deal for North Atlantic crossing to be able to go through Prince Christiansund, which is this kind of big channel at the bottom of Greenland. And today is the closest thing you can get to Glacier Bay, Alaska, because Glacier Bay is basically, the glaciers are gone, just like Glacier National Park. But Prince Christiansund reminds you, if you've ever been to Glacier Bay. And the farthest south towns in Greenland were a couple of the stops, or one called Katortak, and is it Narvik? Do I have that right?
I don't know.
I think it's Narvik.
Didn't go in that direction.
And because Greenland has been was part of a Danish protectorate colony, whatever you want to call it, for a really long time, parts of Greenland that I first visited, those 2 cities, I thought I was in Denmark. I mean, there were not sod houses or, anything like that. They were basically looked like little Danish harbor towns with brightly colored roofs and bright paint and the whole bit. And Narvik, Denmark, maintained an enormous hospital for sailors. So that was basically, it was like a one industry town. But as time goes on and climate change has warmed things up, every time I've gone, we go up farther north. And Nuuk is the capital. And
of Frankenstein. He is bloodied, he's hunted, he's had it with humanity, and he is just stumbling. This blacky block silhouette is disappearing into this blizzard. And something about that broke my heart. I'm still trying to figure out what exactly it means. I mean, entire PhD theses are written about it, but it's something about how our inability to accept humans and all our variety. So that, was the first fascination. The second fascination, I was walking behind my house. I live in Boston, and it was the winter of 2018. And I saw 3 juvenile turtles frozen in the edge of the pond, just like this. And they didn't look alive, but they didn't look dead either. So I ran home, I researched, and I found that there are all kinds of creatures that can actually freeze and thaw out alive. These are wood frogs. This is alligators. Some species of alligators can do this.
There's something genetic that means that when they freeze and thaw, that the cells don't blow up. I can't remember what it is.
There's a certain cryoprotein that they possess. Now, we don't possess it. But weirdly, I mean, you can freeze an embryo, but an embryo is only 120 cells. So that kind of technology exists. But anyway, so this is a tardigrade or water bear. This creature, I know, that's a real thing. It's a little, so cute, right? Like a little vacuum cleaner face.
Oh, yeah.
It's my ex. No, just kidding. But no, this creature is 0.59 millimeters, and you can freeze this little puppy at 359 degrees below zero for 10 years and wake him up, and he's fine. You could shoot him into space, Barbara.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow, I think he's got a fabulous face.
It's not a fabulous face. Look at that.
Right.
I know.
I don't want to interrupt your 5, but when you get there, I have something. No, carry on. When you're done with the 5, I have a couple of things.
So then the other 5, what the heck were they? Oh, just fascination with science and language, and fascination of telling stories that just crest the edge between what is real and what is not, and almost you kind of think, oh, maybe this could happen, you know. And so when I was writing about this girl, you know, thawing out, you know, I had to convince myself, you know, as I was writing it. And the last is really Arctic settings. You know, those are the 5.
Which are absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found really fascinating about the book is, you know, there's a big thing about time travel in literature going on. I mean, Outlander is one example. That's not really time travel, it's time jump. But anyway, and I'm always amazed that somehow or other we all are led to believe that you can zip back to, you know, ancient whatever it is, and everybody can talk to each other. You know, there's like no language barrier. Years ago, Susanna Kersley wrote a fabulous book called The Shadowy Horses, in which, for some reason, a group in the north of England, there was a legion, I think it's the 9th Legion, that disappeared, never was found. And so she imagines that this one Roman centurion, somehow or other, is able to travel up to the present. And everyone's astounded. But the only person that can talk to him is the little kid who's in school studying Latin, because none of the rest of them have any Latin, of course, you know, and he's not speaking in modern English. And so I really like the idea that, you know, you were doing something like that.
Along
Here's
those
this
lines.
girl that has some kind of speech, but there's no recognizable
language.
Yeah, and the fact that you're anxiety-ridden woman who manages to survive a flight. You really wrote that well too.
Oh, thank you.
Are you a scared flyer?
No, not at all.
No? Because, I mean, her anxiety flying was really well done, and I wondered if you were, you know, like taking notes as you did that.
People say, oh, you're like, no, I'm not, I'm really, no. Anyway, I'm not that
Well, you
that frightened.
I thought you wrote that scene with a lot of verisimilitude and a lot
coming
of
from a
emotion.
woman who's read countless thousands of books, but anyway.
And countless thousands of flights, too.
Countless thousands of
flights. Not a nervous flyer either.
So, yeah, I mean, so talking about language in Greenland, I always come up with the story and I write a first draft before I go anywhere, because it's about the story first. It's not about me going somewhere, right? It's about you guys and my readers, and that I want to take them somewhere and have a fabulous story. And me going somewhere is to make it alive for you, because most of us aren't going to go to Greenland. Here are some, talking about language, some blessings and curses in Greenland. Can you read those things? This is
of life and death,
life and death. Pissing in one's shoes keeps no man warm for long. And the summers are like 50 days. Sometimes they're 25 days. And you can read that. And a blessing, may your life be rich in seals. And the cliche is that there are a dozen words for snow, but there are over 170 words for ice. Now, why is that? They need to communicate, the Inuit people, Greenlandic people. It's a hunting and subsistence culture. Not so much in Nuuk. I mean, it's more probably I'm not sure. I haven't been to Nuuk, but so they need to be able to describe the ice to each other. So there might be a kind of ice that's just formed, you know, and just forming, and it's kind of leathery. It's not safe yet. Or there might be the kind that's really old, been around forever. It's porous, or very hard to cut, unpredictable ice. Or there might be the kind of ice that, yeah, could support a man, but not a polar bear, right? 200 pounds, not 1,000 pounds. And thin enough so a seal could break through and create a breathing hole. So good ice to hunt on. So I just think that, you know, language reveals a culture almost in subconscious ways. There's a beautiful word in Japanese, shibui, which means the beauty of aging. And we don't have that in our culture because we worship youth and beauty and sexiness. Just as an example. In Inuit, there are words that do not exist in English. There's an Inuit word that means to take extraordinary pleasure in being alive and inseparable from nature. We don't have a word for that, do we? The word in Inuktitut, which is, there are 3 languages in Greenland, that's one of them, for climate change, is a friend acting strangely. So what does that reveal? That reveals that to them, nature is a friend. It's not an enemy. It's not, I mean, I live, you know, in the snowy north, and even though everyone's supposed to be used to it, whenever there's a snowstorm, it's, you know, Stormageddon, Bombageddon. Please, you know, why the drama? And why this sense of distance between us and what's happening outside? We're a part of nature. So the friend acting strangely is, you know, their word for climate change. And there is a word for doing what needs to be done to stay alive, and it's translated as the great necessity. And that can encompass all kinds of incredibly difficult acts. Let's see, so it's just a shot from, I was on the east side.
Okay.
I went to Kulusuk, and from Kulusuk, traveled up. So just some stats on Greenland.
Okay.
It's 1,500 miles north to south. The ice cap is 1,500 miles north to south, 700 miles east to west. It's over 600,000 cubic feet of ice, 2 miles deep at its thickest. If it were to ever melt, the seas would rise 23 feet. But weirdly, the island would rise because it's kind of like a bowl, and it would just rise up. And actually, there's some scientists who say they're not sure there's land everywhere. It's almost kind of lacy. You know, it's just, they don't know.
Right.
So...
yeah, if the permafrost, I mean, there's a lot of things going on as the permafrost is melting. Actually, we were in Holland a couple of years, well, before the pandemic,
Right.
so it must have been 2019 or 2018. And they have a whole project going on to contain the North Sea, because Holland, you know, is low and it floods, which is why they're so good with dikes and everything. But what's happening is, as the ice is melting and the land at the north is rising, Holland is sinking.
That's bizarre.
And so, I mean, it's like a teeter-totter or whatever it is. So the Dutch are really looking tremendously hard at ways to protect their country, because they're really going to flood. So if Greenland, if the ice cap does melt, and Antarctica melts, I mean, the seas are going to seriously rise. Think about the subways in New York. You know, they're going to be uninhabitable. Miami will go underwater. Beachfront property in Kauai, which is going for like $1 million a square foot or something, you know, is not going to be desirable. And, and you're right, nobody knows for sure what is under the ice in Greenland.
And I went when Trump was trying to buy it, so that was fun. Literally the month that Trump was trying to buy it, so they were loving Americans.
I'll bet.
Anyway, so this is a close-up of where I went.
Prince Christiansund in the bottom of the map. You know, it's just that
I do.
Just had.
Yeah, I don't know if you can go back.
Yeah. Do you see it down there at the very bottom?
See where she was, Nuke?
Yeah, Prince Christiansund is a fjord basically. Yep. So even that part of Greenland is separated from the main part of Greenland by the sea.
All these fjords all along, and these massive, massive mountains that jut out of the sea.
And Nuuk is the capital.
And I'm just showing you some beauty shots I flew from Reykjavik, just so you can see it, into a tiny town, Tassalak. These towns are just, I don't know, 500 people.
But see the colors and all. I mean, that's why I say they have a kind of a Danish look, you know, because they have wonderful colors. Yeah, and you know, people who live where it's dark so much, they really like bright colors. If you're in Sweden, for example, all the government buildings are painted yellow to look like sun.
And the entire population of Greenland is 56,000, which is 1/10 the population of Wyoming. So think of a piece of land a third the size of Canada, which has the population of a community college, and spread out all along this coastline. So then I took a boat 10 miles up one of these fjords, and there was nothing. There is no one and nothing to this. I went with Natural Habitat. These are prefab cabins, and I felt pretty safe. That's the view to the back, view to the front, the cabin itself, Not too bad, right? But there were polar bears, and there was just this chintzy fence, you know, this electric fence between us and these guys. And polar bears are very aggressive. They really will come at you.
They're hungry.
They're prized. They're hunted. I'm putting on a Mustang suit. This is a suit that has a flotation device sewn into it. And I'm heading to the iceberg graveyard. Why is it called that? Because for some reason in this particular fjord, the currents wash in these massive, massive icebergs, 10 stories high, blocks long, all of them just carved into these strange shapes. It's hard to get a feel of scale here, but a few slides down, you will be able to see just how massive these are. And you're always hearing these muffled explosions everywhere. And look at this guy. This was like 3 blocks long. Looked like this giant centipede, massive centipede. So here's where you can get a little idea of scale. Do you see the boat? That's not our tour group because this could crash at any time. In fact, I asked our tour guide, like, what do we do if something massive breaks? And he said, just turn toward the sound because the wave that will come will probably breach you. And I said, so that's all, we just turn our kayaks toward the sound. He said, yes. He didn't say you're going to live. He just said, turn your So we're like, okay, that's what we'll do. This is I'm standing in front of the Helheim Glacier, which is receding 7 miles per year, just to give you an idea of size and scale of these things. 7 miles a year. I'm standing on the ice cap, taking a little journey. This is just a shot to sort of try to talk about. There are rivers that are miles wide underneath a mile of ice. Mm-hmm. So if you can sort of picture that. That was not our group up there. And then the tiny towns. This is my guide. And that's a quota. You can only catch so many walrus, polar bear, minke whale, narwhal. And when a polar bear is seen, it's not good for the polar bear because they will be pursued because they're dangerous. I was talking about the great necessity. There's a sort of lore about this one hunter. He was out in his kayak and he hit an iceberg and he knew he had only minutes to live because he was going to sink, and he saw a seal. So he harpoons the seal, he pulls it in, he guts the seal through its mouth, blows into it so it's inflated, ties it off, and rides it to shore. Talk about the great necessity. Yeah, right? These are
hard enough. It's hard for the seal, but
tough for the seal. Yeah. And sled dogs. Sled dogs are not considered pets. No. They're property. They're taken care of, but here's a guy with a piece of pilot whale, and food is so expensive, right? I mean, a can of dog food is $5. It's much easier to go in and hunt something. And they were kept on an island, the island of sled dogs, because it was just more convenient. But for the tourists, they let us hold the puppies.
Oh, look at that. I love it.
So that was fun. Some other Arctic animals, Arctic fox, just some renditions, artistic renditions of them. I didn't see any. I did find a skull. Caribou, of course. Mm-hmm. Narwhal. We did see some breakthrough. And this is just to show you what a pod of them looks like. And muskox. And you mentioned sod houses. Sod houses are, what amazed me about Greenland, one of the many things, is that how it's so close to prehistory. As recently as 1950, people were living in sod houses. Sod houses are, during the short summer season, they would dig into the ground a hole, and cover it with whale ribs for a roof support, and cover that with caribou skins and peat and rocks, and live in that for 10 months a year. Right? 1950. So this, that was sort of this is to show how tight it was in there. I got to interview, this is the mayor's house of this tiny town, 120 people. And I asked him, he's 70. So when he was 7, he lived in his sod house until he was 7. And they built a house like the kind you saw, and they built it over the sod house because in case it didn't work out, because it was so different, right? And I asked him, so were you excited? I mean, what was it like to go from a sod house to the other? And he said, I hated it because I missed people so much. I never had that sense of closeness to other people again. I have never had that. We did everything together. We hunted. We shared the food. We made up songs. We made jokes. I mean, look, I'm sure it wasn't perfect, but I mean, and I said, well, they're right there. I mean, they're right across the street. And he said, no, it didn't feel the same. So I thought that was interesting. And I thought that's funny because there is no fast food in but they wanted Cheerios. Oh my God. And this is a typical store. And the town is so few people that, you know, life is very close to death. And that was clear in the surroundings. And then here's just kayaks were invented in Greenland. And they were made out of these bones and caribou skins. And the anoraks were hand sewn, custom sewn. The women sewed them to fit the man and the kayak so perfectly that they were watertight. So even if they flipped, they would be okay. And we do that today in kayaks. People flipping in kayaks all the time. Here's another picture.
Probably safer than Zodiacs. I mean, when we were up further north, we zipped around in Zodiacs among the icebergs and the whole. I wasn't always in down.
Yeah.
But a Zodiac is really dangerous because, you know, if something happens and you're pitched into the water, you don't have any kind of.
I know. Did you wear a Mustang suit?
No, they just had, you know, flotation devices on us. We had these giant orange parkas. Remember the orange parka? I mean, you feel like a polar bear, and you have to.
Yeah.
I don't know if they would be a flotation device, or if you just sink like a stone to the bottom, it would be all over. Fortunately, our Zodiac never did hit
had
anything.
To tow, like, you know, was supposed to keep you a worm too. I mean, I don't know what.
I mean, the problem with icebergs is it's only, what is it, a ninth is above the surface. So you can see this great big towering thing, but the majority of it is underneath, and you don't know if it has you know, prongs or something that, you know, you could run into, and it could sink your boat because you can't really see them.
Sometimes most of it is beneath.
Well, most of it is. But if there's also ice floating on the water, then you can't see the iceberg, what's under the water. So it's quite dangerous to go out in the Zodiac. Yeah.
This is just a guy. He's an artist, and he was painting on the buildings. I thought that was cool. And this is a very cool piece of indigenous art.
That's wonderful.
And you do a double take. Is he eating him? No, he's sort of a dreamy looking thing, I thought. And here I am with my guides. And here's a shot of Kulusuk, $1 billion views. I just love Greenland because I feel like it's not ruined yet. And I think as humans, we have just simultaneous need for mystery and also the need to destroy it. Because we want the answer, but once we want the answer, we want another mystery. Right? Here we are. Give us another mystery, Barbara, please. I ate this one, you know, so so I really treasure that time that I was there. And,
so where is it that you take your gal, whose name I'm blanking out on, but it'll come to me here in a minute?
Oh, Val?
Val.
The protagonist?
Right. So she is where in Greenland when she's gone to this research station? She's
actually on the west. I made up an island off the coast of Greenland just because I've learned that I don't want to be beholden to reality too much, and then you get one thing wrong and one pissed off reader, and it's just like, what? I mean, with this, this was my book, Into the Jungle, I wrote before this book. I spent a month in the Peruvian Amazon. That's a whole different show. But it was funny. So The River at Night was my debut. And I remember I just forgot what it was I got wrong. And it was just like, oh man, did I get heat?
Because it was a real place and you got it wrong?
No, it was just something about some kind of plant doesn't grow that time of year in Maine. And I'm like, get a life, sort of. You know what I mean?
I remember.
I'm going to get something wrong.
Just to make you feel better, I remember an historical novel written by an English author set in the 11th century, and part of it had a scene where women were spinning, and he actually had somebody write and tell him that the spinning technology was incorrect. I mean, how, there are readers
they didn't talk about the book at all.
Resist.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then you get the 1 star, and you're like, yeah, thanks.
Right. Yeah. Well, anyway, so Val survives a flight that is very hard for her because she's so anxious and, scared of claustrophobic, the whole thing. She is anxious to find out what really happened to her brother, if she can. And then her ostensible person in the funding comes because she's an academic, so she doesn't have access to a lot of money, is to figure out whether she can communicate with this girl who, is fascinating to everybody. And Val's got a background in Old Norse languages. So the question is, can she manage to, it must have been like a Helen Keller thing in a way. I was thinking about that.
There was a little bit of that
because basically you would have to hold on to something, like hand or, nose or something and try to.
Exactly. I did some other research with linguists where I said, well, I have this girl, she's speaking this language and I need to speak an ancient language. How would Val, even though she knows Nordic languages, how would they communicate? And they said, well, it's almost like you'd have talking with a baby. You start with objects, like you said, and a bag of marbles, so many versus single. But this girl is traumatized. She's thawed from the ice. She wakes up. She doesn't know where she is. She doesn't recognize her clothes. Where are her parents? So she doesn't want to communicate. So it almost didn't matter. It didn't matter. Two people need to want to speak to each other, And it wasn't until the girl trusts Val that she sees the necessity of communicating, because she knows she's dying. Actually,
how old do you imagine this girl is?
It's between 7 and 8.
Okay, so she really is young. She's not a teenager.
No.
And this is
teenager is a whole different
right. Yeah. And this is kind of a Michael Crichton kind of an idea here.
Yeah.
Is it likely that this girl is going to live, or is she?
You mean in the story?
Well,
that's the whole story. Does she
let's
make
not go there, right?
Let's not go
but
there.
Did you imagine that
book.
if this could happen, whether this is a person who would survive for a short? I mean, the lifespan of really ancient people was fairly short. I mean, 29 was old.
Exactly.
And so you don't know whether genetically she would be equipped, let alone anything else, to live a long time.
Well, 7 and 8. I mean, yeah, she had some life to live. So yeah, but there is the bad guy. His name is Wyatt. He's the researcher. When I say bad guy, he's more complex than that, but he has his own designs on this secret. How did she thaw out alive? And if he knew that, well, his research would be invaluable. So, but the girl doesn't trust him, and she doesn't trust anybody. So that's in the course of the story. The trust builds, but bad things happen too. So
in the academic,
I've been accused of giving up spoilers, so I have to shut up.
You should stop there. But I was thinking, in academic and scientific circles, the reward system is different. It isn't necessarily money. You know, it may
Right.
be prestige. Or any of you read Tony Hillerman's Thief of Time? This is Edgar-winning book,
Yeah.
and you know, it comes down to academic advancement and, you know, academic jealousy and so forth, the reason for the crime. And when I was teaching crime fiction at ASU, that was one of the books I assigned the students. One of them thought it was a credible motive. They
never thought it was a crime novel?
No, they just couldn't imagine that was a motive that would inspire somebody. You know,
oh, it certainly is a motive.
You know,
absolutely.
but I think, you know, it's true in research areas in science and in academic circles that oftentimes there can be a blood sport, you know, trying to be first with a discovery and so forth. So, you know, it's a really interesting story that Erica has written, and very complex. So
thank you,
Barbara. I enjoyed it a lot. Any of you have any questions that you might like to ask about writing, or?
When did you start it again, and when did you finish it there?
So 2018, I must have like January 2018, and took about two years. I don't know, so many revisions, but about 4 years altogether from idea to here, you know, because I've only been out a week.
I keep thinking about a Netflix show that I saw.
Yeah.
There seem to be a lot of Netflix on Iceland.
Yes.
I don't know about Greenland, but just Nordic.
The Arctic is very hip right now. Yes.
So much, and I saw one that was a little bit similar in that there was a volcano or something, and people would disappear and then not show up, and finally somebody would find them.
Oh, was it a Danish show?
Either Danish or Icelandic.
Right, but I mean subtitles. I mean, I think I saw that. Yeah.
But I don't know the name of it, of course.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
There's a lot of fabulous crime fiction that is coming out of Scandinavia. There's a channel called MHZ TV that has wonderful programs from all over the world, and a lot of them are Danish.
Right.
There was a brilliant series too in Finland. And one of the reasons to watch them is the scenery and the chance to see these cultures. Right, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, as I say, Finland, and Iceland has had there's actually a crime fiction festival called Iceland Noir that meets in November, and I may go this year because it's a chance to see the Northern Lights, which I think would be really exciting. And Ragnar Jonasson, who's a well-known Icelandic author, has been to see us as a break from Iceland. He came to Scotland, obviously in the winter. You know, so world is really shrinking in lots of respects. Yeah.
Did you make any friends up there?
Well, I was traveling with my group. It was only 6 people, so nothing that really. I keep in touch with them, like on email and stuff, but they're from all over the world. I mean, Australia, Germany. Yeah.
How did the pandemic work out with them?
This was before the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, if you kept in touch with them, do you know anything? I'm just curious, because I don't hear anything on the news. About it up there. We hear everything about here all the time. But I don't know anything.
Well, I'd have to be talking about Australia and Germany. That when let's see, right after it happened, my Australian friend, there was that horrible fire, and then I was very concerned about her then, and then we lose track of all these disasters, right? But we're on to the next one. Everyone's fine as far as I know. Everyone's fine.
Good.
I know, right?
Good to hear that.
Were you asking about some of the Arctic communities? Because, in the 1918 flu epidemic, whole villages died, because they were so close together. They didn't have medical help. Of course, nobody knew what was going on anyway. I don't know whether COVID was quite so decimated some of these small communities to that degree or not.
I mean, that's a
or
great
how
comment.
effective lockdowns were. Did you have questions that you wanted to address there, Patrick?
Yeah.
Great. Patrick's been monitoring the Facebook and YouTube audience.
Yeah, let's see. Can you all hear me okay?
Sure.
Yep. All right. Let's see. Yeah, Ann Patrick, who's watching, she asks, what destination is next on your must-see list?
It depends on the book I write next, and I've already gone to that place. It's in America. I'm not really at liberty to talk about the next book next. So I guess I'm sorry. I have to be a little boring in that regard. But yeah, go ahead.
All right. Let's see. She has a couple of other questions. So
Yeah.
She says, I loved both of your earlier books, The River at Night and Into the Jungle.
Thank you.
What was the most exciting real-life journey for you?
Real-life journey, does she mean during doing the research? Or I guess that's what she means?
I don't know. What was the most exciting real-life journey for you? Maybe she'll clarify. And what did you mean? And then she also writes, and what was the scariest thing that happened to you during your travels?
I think it was encountering the electric eel on a night boat in the Amazon in the forest. And I never saw my guide. He was so cool all the time. He was a native Peruvian guide. He'd started hunting at age 9, you know, but we were on this night boat and out of nowhere, this massive electric eel leapt out of the water. It was like as big as a tire, and it just twisted around and like hit our boat, and I thought it was going to flip it, and that was really terrifying. I didn't know it was an electric eel, he said, but he told me later that that's what that was.
Did they shock you?
No, it did not touch us, but it can stun a horse. It can kill you easily.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was the only time I saw him the least bit flustered, you know. There were other things too. Something was in my room. I'm not sure what. I've never felt like I was not in the jungle, even because I went to this place where everything was actually built from materials from the jungle, and my room was just, you know, wood and screen. Actually, screen is not from the jungle, so pieces of screen, and then, you know, thatch. And what lives in thatch? Insects. What eats insects? Snakes. You know, mice. You know, all kinds of things. And I just heard stuff up there. And, you know, but I was there a month, and I kind of got weirdly used to it. In my bathroom, there were vampire bats that would sing every time I took a shower. Got used to those. They're kind of cute by the end of it. Just hanging, swinging, doing their vampire bat thing. Yeah, and the showers were showers. I say showers casually. This is river water. You know, it's river water for a month. I took like a 3-hour shower when I came home. It's quite nice.
There's a gentleman who has a question that I'm going to have to read from the computer. Let me just go back to it real quick. It's a good one, too.
I personally think the scariest thing in Peru is the drinking water. I've managed on 3 different trips. I managed to get sick twice. The last time I finally, you know, survived.
I brushed my teeth like, oh no, don't.
Yep,
you know?
exactly.
Yeah.
Ice is a trap. Ice is a terrible trap. You have to be really careful.
Ice.
And if you open your mouth in the shower, which, you know, is not that. On
the other hand, I came home and I was taking showers in potable water, as we do, and I was just thinking, what a waste, because we're bathing in water we can drink. I mean, how spoiled are we? You know.
Well, we are. No question about it.
We're incredibly spoiled.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Back here in the disembodied
ether?
voice. Okay, here's a question from a gentleman named Jonathan.
Yeah.
And he says, post-interview question for Erica.
Yeah.
No spoilers, but in the tale, I felt a great, albeit ambivalent at times, love for academia from the main character. What is your own relationship, not only with languages, but academia?
Well, I love languages, and academia, I'm not sure what that means. I love learning. I have a master's in creative writing. I don't know if I would call myself an academic. I think it's the most important thing in the world that we continue learning our entire lives, as you all do here, I'm sure. But I made a decision after I got my master's. Do I get my PhD in creative writing, or do I just do what I want to do, and I just couldn't do both because I didn't want to talk about it or analyze it or anything, teach it. I wanted to do it. And, you know, this takes time, people. This takes so much time to get it right, or even close to right, or even enough right to entertain enough people that, you know, we're all sitting in this room. And so.
Well, you're attracted to dangerous places, right?
I love using settings as a character. I do. And I don't know exactly where that comes from. In the next book, nature will be fighting us, and we will have to figure out this terrible paradox. How do we defeat an enemy we desperately need to survive? So there will be that speculative element. And the book is going to be called The Intelligence, because we have our brains, but we do not know. I mean, there are trees that can communicate with their children, their saplings, through chemistry. I'm not sure you've read, you know, Braiding Sweetgrass, all these books.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's the mother tree who can, or the tree that knows it's dying will release its sugars to its children, you know, or it knows there's a certain parasitic beetle on it, and there's the acacia trees in Africa, and if a giraffe is chomping on them, it will release a chemical in the air to its other acacia trees, so those acacia trees release a chemical in their leaves that is repellent to a giraffe. Now, if that's not intelligent, I don't know what is. And I love that there's so much that we don't understand. I love that. I mean, why else get up in the morning, right? If we knew everything, that would be what?
Well, a lot of it is communication, you know. I mean, we can't talk to the tree or talk to
Not yet.
You know, which is sort of what you're dealing with in your book to some extent. So, you know, it is fascinating, I think. All the different ecologies.
Out there communicating.
And which of us will survive climate change and which of us won't is a really interesting character.
Oh, I think this will be fine after a while. When we're gone, it will bounce back. It's very strong.
Yeah, but that's the when we're gone part. I know, right? Yeah. Well, you know, the dinosaurs didn't expect to go extinct, and you know, things changed, and so I think Mother Nature has a corrective, you know, built into her at some point when things get untenable, and it changes. Yeah. You know, but
I think the whales have a lot to tell us.
So much, right? I mean, oh my God!
And
if we could just.
The whales. I really would like you to write something
about whales.
I love the sounds and how they communicate for miles and miles, and they're so there.
Are they there or what? I started a book that I abandoned, but it was about crows, and I just started studying bird songs and how they had, you know, isolated the songs. And they were just trying to figure out like what the songs meant as much as they can, you know, by watching the reactions of the other birds, like what they did. And crows they have the largest brain for their body size of any bird. So they recognize faces, you know, they will remember if you hurt them, and they will try to hurt you back.
About the GPS that's built into birds into salmon, for example.
Well, how fascinating is that?
Which I think is
that
just
birds
amazing.
Can find their way, you know. What an intelligence that is, you know, and we don't understand that yet. I kind of like that we don't understand it yet.
I was a student.
Yeah.
I'm a voice teacher.
Oh.
The coloratura soprano, real hot.
Yeah.
And this bird, whenever she would come for a lesson, would be in my chimney. I'm living carefree.
Yeah.
And would tweet because she's up there singing.
Yeah.
They could tweet back and forth to each other. I just called it tweeting. And there was this communication.
You don't mean Twitter, I know.
She knew which day she was coming for every Monday at 10 o'clock in the morning.
There you go.
Waiting.
Right.
Well, anyway,
I love
Wow,
that.
that's
That
so
is
Queen of the
so
Night.
cool.
I love it. Here,
In different parts of the country are different too.
Yeah.
Songs.
They sing different songs.
yeah.
Right. They have names for each other. That's what I read. I mean, I don't know.
Because I
if that's
thought I
true.
knew some of the birds back up in Michigan. When I came down here, I saw the same birds. Didn't sound like them at all.
Oh, how weird.
Yeah. The same bird, but they took over the.
Ooh, it's an accent.
Yeah.
Local accent. Well, I just came from my hotel, and and just coming here, I've heard bird song that I've never heard in my life. That you have here. What kind of bird am I? Does anyone know what that bird is?
These aren't as friendly.
Oh, I mean, it's
To me,
so eerie.
The other ones I could be real friendly with.
Yeah. Oh,
Well, the little gambrel quail have interesting
come up
sounds,
to
and
you.
the cactus wren.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not here.
Yeah.
Not with me, anyway.
Yeah.
We have a yard full of quail and a yard full of hummingbirds.
Yeah.
We have a beautiful garden, and the
nice.
hummingbirds live there, and they zoom around. But the quail, you can really hear them, chatter to. And every once in a while, a family of ducks a mother duck will land in the pool and give, I looked out there one day, the dogs were barking, and there was a duck and, little goslings
Oh,
floating around.
that's cool.
No, goslings are geese. What are ducks?
Ducklings.
Ducklings.
Yep.
Floating around in the
That's right.
pool. It was wonderful.
Mm.
Did you have a clarification on the question?
I think she just meant an experience from all of your
Not book related, but just
Oh,
in general.
in my life, I'm sorry, I lost the track of the question.
There's no going back. Sorry.
Okay, I am sorry. I'm a little jet lagged. I'm like, yeah.
Well, you obviously have enjoyed travel.
Yes, absolutely.
And so that makes you different than Val, who is, the
Petrified.
anxious and
Yep.
nervous traveler. But yeah. Right. Well, thank you. It was a
Thank
really
you so
fascinating
much.
program.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your attention. I'm so glad that you could join us this evening. Isn't it nice to be back?
Yeah, in
doing
person.
actual
This
live
is so,
things again.
Oh my God.
And talking
Life
about
again,
travel.
it's so
So anyway, good evening to you all. Thanks for coming. Hello. We hope you're enjoying our programs and podcasts with authors. We'd like to expand them, and your help would be appreciated. Please make a donation at poisonedpenfoundation.org. 100% of the proceeds will go to help connect authors with readers in this difficult time. Thank you.